Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Three Principles Global Community webinar. The Three Principles Global Community, or 3PGC, is a nonprofit organization that's committed to bringing an understanding of the three principles to people throughout the world. Today, we have Denise Holland with us. Denise is going to talk about presence versus conditioning and high performance. Denise is the founder of Class Performance Excellence Within, specializing in the area of human performance in sport. She has coached in elite sports performance for over 20 years, collaborating with other coaches in many different sports all over the world. As Scotland's former national netball coach, Denise presided over the team's move up the world rankings to 12th place and saw them qualify for the Commonwealth Games in 2014. Frustratingly, she was unable to help them when this previously high-performing team finished last in a major competition amidst bickering, lack of focus, and uncharacteristic mistakes. This pivotal moment was a real wake-up call, and Denise went on a mission to find the key to consistent quality performance. Little did she know that her discovery would be the ultimate game changer for people who are inspired to create, explore, and achieve in life. Denise, thank you so much for coming on. I'm really excited to hear what you have to share today. I'm going to turn it over to you.
Okay, well, thank you. Thank you very much, Bonnie. And thank you for being here, and certainly for the recording for everyone that is listening. So how does performance look to me? Well, now it looks very different to what it used to look like during my career. Say, I first competed in the World Championship in '91, and I had a really torrid time of being an athlete. And now it looks so much different. So I think during this webinar, what I'd really love to do is to kind of share how it looks to me now, and to reflect and go back to how it looked to me before I had any understanding of my state of mind and how it was created moment to moment. And I will do my best to kind of just use all sorts of different words and terminologies, because what I'm pointing to is not in the words. So maybe we can just look beyond the words and get a real feel for what it is that I'm, inspired to share. So, yeah, so as a start, I just kind of see what occurs to me, and there's a couple of stories that are just sort of coming in, and one of the first ones I kind of inspired to share is that I didn't see. So I didn't see. As a kid, I really loved performing in sport. I mean, I really was natural. Like, I was one of those kids that would be always upside down and really just active the whole time, and I really loved it. And I see this happening in with young people, is that they're totally inspired to just get involved in activity. And I was watching some footballers, actually. I was at a tournament a little while ago, like a couple of weekends ago, and I was just watching them just play, just come and play. They're all different ages, from about 7 up to 16. And it was effortless. Like, they were just loving the activity. And then somewhere along the line, we learn that the outcome means something. And certainly for me, I went through my whole career, if you like, on this treadmill of trying to be the best I could be. Now, that sounds all very innocent, but the way I heard it, which was really interesting when I look back now, is I heard it that I needed to be the best I could be because I wasn't already okay. And we tell our kids that quite innocently, but I heard it differently, that unless I was really working hard, persevering, being 100% dedicated and committed, but it felt hard. And that's what I thought that was necessary in order for me to be okay as a human being. And on reflection, when I look back, I even was in a sprint race, a running race, when I was 7 years old. And I tell this story because it really speaks to how our young people hear things. And I came second in this running race. And at 7 years old, I changed it to first on the certificate. Now that's just, when I think about it now, it's like, oh my word, I can really feel that young child believing that the outcome said something about me as a person. And that started this whole, I don't know where I heard it from, I don't know. And that's what I mean by conditioning. So at one point I was just being present to the moment. I'm just childlike, I'm just playing. The outcome is not at the front of my mind. Yes, it's great to win, but having a go and being involved was just so much fun. And then the next minute, somehow the outcome was saying something about me. And that's what I mean by conditioning. And I realized that misunderstanding was with me my entire career, even through to being a national coach. And I see this happening more. I see this happening all the time, and it's just, for me, I think, well, okay, well, let's just have a look at that. Let's have a look at what it is that we can understand about our experience that would allow us to stay, if you like, in that childlike, beautiful expression of this incredible intelligence and energy behind life, and have that available to us, like access that in us, even when, yeah, we're really inspired to do something. And so it's really interesting that how lost we get. And for me, when I look back at my career, I can see that I just continually got caught in a misunderstanding. And so I can remember as a national coach that we were at the Singapore Six Nations, and we played in the rounds. We played 5 matches, and we played against Namibia, India, Singapore, Tanzania, I think one other, and Wales. And in the rounds, the performances just flowed. So there was this, when I look back, there was this just very automatic zone-like feeling where everyone showed up and they're really present. They seem to be connecting with each other in a beyond the cognitive function. It seemed to be that there was this collective understanding about how the ball should travel, where it should go, how we should communicate beyond the word, beyond our almost the senses. It's because netball is so fast, and everything seemed to flow. And we got to the final stages, and we were unbeaten, completely. Just kind of went in and kind of wipe the floor. And then something really interesting happened. And so for me, that's a really good description of what it's like to be playing an international match. And there's this real sense of expression without there being anything on it. Now, when it came to the final, it was 3 days after we'd played Wales. And suddenly my head filled up with silverware, world rankings, more funding. Like suddenly there was this, the game wasn't the same. Like suddenly I had to cope with all of this head noise. And that I wouldn't be okay unless we achieved these things. Now, none of that was there in the first 5 games. Or at least, here's a thing, I was really into mental skills at the time. So I would have used some of those to control and manage my thinking. And I thought that the fact that we were able to flow and be in this effortful state was because of those mental skills. And it was really interesting that, no, Denise, on reflection, it had nothing to do with the mental skills we did beforehand. Like in the moment, you just play. It looked like it had everything to do with mental skills, techniques to clear the minds of the players and myself. But when I look at it, it really didn't. Like I attributed our zone state feelings to mental skills. But in the moment, of course, it has nothing to do with that. You just play. In the moment, the performance just comes through our physical bodies and minds. And we just played until the final. And the final was really interesting because all of this head noise started to come in. And here's the deal. I then tried to apply all these techniques and these mental skills that I would have applied to calm my nerves and to, and to help the players to have go out there clear-minded. But nothing worked. Like it just didn't help. And we went out against Wales, and the in the rounds we beat Wales 48-41. So we beat them by 7, and in the final we lost the game 30-53. 3 days later, and we lost by 23 goals, and we came second in a major international competition. And there for me is this misunderstanding that of 2 things really, that I got caught in a misunderstanding that I wouldn't be okay, that my well-being was somehow contingent on the result. And I had that about the final game because that was kind of the ultimate, like if we'd have won it, then there would have been all of these world rankings would have been at stake. But I didn't have that in the first 5 games. And the game of netball is the same. Like it's no different. It's a game of netball. It's the same game as we played in the rounds against Wales. But what we all brought to it was a lot of head noise, a lot of meaning. So we had this game of netball and we went outcome focused, we gave it meaning, we were unable to be present in the moment. And no amount of mental skills was able to help us at that point. And I think that was probably one of the first times I realized that optimal performance is not about controlling the mind. because it didn't work. One minute we were playing freely, and the next minute we were awkward, we made uncharacteristic mistakes, we just didn't gel as a team. And I didn't have any bananas to feed my kind of chimp voice, which is where I was at the time in terms of controlling psychology. And that was a turning point for me. And I realized then, yeah, there's something else here. There's something else to understand, because we did all right in the previous time, and then we started to go outcome focused, and started to, now I look at it, when I look back, started to believe that our experiences were I think it was more, when I look at it now, that we were believing that our well-being was contingent on the outcome. I don't think I was really looking about where my experience was coming from. So yeah, that's kind of one example. And I guess I just would want to check in with you guys to see if how this is landing, and see where we go from here, and see if there are any questions at this point. And then we can kind of come to the same thing, but we can point to it with a different wand, because what we're pointing to is, it's not a form, it is this formless energy that creates performance in us, and also creates our conditioning in life, our mental conditioning, and who we think we are. So do you have any questions at the moment? No? Go ahead, Terry.
I'm curious about, I'm relating to everything you say as you know, I'm an artist, and I have a whole lot of conditioning around outcome with my art. And when I came across this understanding, everything changed around that. You know, the actual act of creating is the piece that it's about, rather than whatever the outcome is. What I'm wondering about is, I'm trying to relate this to my own situation. So there's what has happened in the past with your story, and is it, I mean, I'm just curious, is it possible that even if you had this understanding during that final match, the outcome could have been the same? I'm just curious whether, because it feels like to me, and I don't, please let me know what you think about this, it's so not up to me. Like I know what you're saying around, I don't have to jump through a bunch of hoops and do particular things so that whatever art I end up with turns out the way I think it should. When I do that, I'm always disappointed because of the perfectionism and everything else that comes up. But I'm not sure it always makes a difference to the actual performance. Like I could be up in my head a lot when I'm creating something, and it still happens, and then I have something, and I don't always see a relationship between my state of mind and what the outcome is. When I look at it from this understanding, I realize it doesn't really matter.
No.
You know, it's okay if I have a lot of thinking. It's okay if I don't have a lot of thinking. I'm still doing what I'm doing, and there's an outcome. There's something being created. So I don't know if there's a question in there or not. It's sort of like looking at it from a very expanded view.
Yeah. I love your question, Terry. So what's coming to mind is probably, you know, and this is just for me, all right, and this is kind of where I am, is the principles, or what they're pointing to, have really helped me to show up to life in a completely different way. And if I take my sports coaching now, say my netball coaching now, and my netball coaching business now, they just explain, for me, they just explain what's happening. So, and because I'm more in tune to the feeling I'm having and where it's really coming from, so the fact that a fact of thought and the fact that I know that I'm creating or I'm not creating, that my experience is being created in me and through me via this amazing gift we have. Because I have a sense of that, and I, a real sort of a deeper knowing of that, I do show up differently on the whole. All right. So if I look at my behaviors and my output 5 years ago to what it is now, or 7 years ago, say, to what it is now, it is very different. So what's different would be And I love your question, because the question would be, yeah, sure, I have a bad day. we can still have, let's not even call it bad. We can still have a day where your output perhaps isn't as productive as another day, right? And so I can show up with the young people now, and last week actually was a prime example of that. They didn't start well. They didn't warm up very well. And I could feel myself getting irritated and agitated. And that's okay. That's okay. That's the human condition. Now, and it seems I'm not in the thought factory dishing them out, right? So I'm not really in control of that. But because I have a deeper sense of my feeling state, so much more than I ever did, and I profoundly know that that's not coming from the girls, and the fact that they're not warming up properly, and the fact that they've really got off to they're not playing to their skill capacity, and they've got off to a bit of a bad start. And I could feel the irritation, but I knew it wasn't coming from them. Like I could just feel it. Now, there'll be days where I don't feel it in the moment, and I respond from a space of, if you like, misunderstanding that my experience is coming from their lack of preparation. And I will just behave the way I'm going to behave, which might be that I'll say things and I'll be angry, a bit more agitated or angry, and I won't get the coaching points out, and I won't be as connective as I would ordinarily. But if I catch it, and that's what the principles give me, is that I get an opportunity to catch my feeling state. I catch my state of mind. And then I can and then it settles down. As soon as I catch it, oh yeah, I settle down. And then it seems that I can be more connective, and that, wisdom shows up in me, that I kind of come out with a particular comment that is really helpful. And that's just how it's working for me. And who's to say that me shouting at them or getting agitated isn't helpful? Maybe it is helpful, because maybe it helped them to shape up, And what I love about this conversation is neither is right or wrong. And it just is, because for me, when I'm feeling really present, and when I'm kind of in my personal thinking of and misunderstanding that my experience is coming from outside of me, and that I'm not enough unless that out there is fixed, that's all coming from mind. Like, it's all coming from the intelligence of behind life. It's not one or the other. I can't not be mind. I can't not be these principles, right? And for me, it just explains it. But there is something around waking up to how it's working that has changed, naturally changed the what is produced through this physical body and mind. Does that answer your question, Terry?
I loved your answer. One of the things I adore about the principles is there's no doing with it. You know, it's kind of like you're noticing or you're realizing from this understanding how things are actually happening. And the understanding itself takes care of anything that may or may not need to be done. Really nothing needs to be done, but the understanding itself it just shifts our perception. It shifts everything so that you're moving into life in a new way, but not because of anything you're doing per se. Like I don't catch something. Like for me, I don't really catch myself doing something and then say, well, now I'm going to change that. It's more like I see it and then it changes on its own because it just changes, because I am seeing it clearly, not because I'm trying to do something with it now that I see it clearly. Do you know what I mean? I'm not personally responsible for making it different.
Yeah.
I'm just realizing something bigger, and then it shows up differently, but not by my efforting.
That's beautiful, Terry.
But it's really big for me because most of us have grown up in this idea that we have to make it happen. And even with the principles and the principle of thought, well, if I need to change my thought or I need to do something, that it becomes an action. That's not the way it works.
Yeah.
Then we're just repeating old behaviors or old thinking. And with this understanding, it opens the mind to what's actually going on and all the possibilities that are always present.
That's lovely. That's really lovely. Something that's coming to mind, I could see when I came across this understanding, I could see and it was in awe of the physical body. Like, how does this aerobic system work? Like, how is it I can train, and then there is this capacity in me that helps me to run for longer. And then I could see the anaerobic system, which is, if I can actually train and do things which would make me go faster and stronger and repeatedly. And I could just see that was happening, and that had nothing to do with Denise. The capacity of it, the fact of it, had nothing to do with Denise. And then I was like, well, yeah, but my thoughts do. Like, I'm responsible for my thinking. I was like, how does that work? And then I could see, well, if it happens, if there's something that's behind all of my physiology, then surely there must be something behind my psychology. And I started to see the innocence of thought in the moment, and the fact that it just appears. Oh, well, if it just appears, oh, well, yeah, that's kind of this intelligence, great. But then it's up to me to control it. Well, hang on a minute, Denise. Can we really do that? Can we really control our thinking? And then I could say, nah, it just looks like we can. And I could say that that wasn't necessary, that the nature of it just comes and goes, and I didn't need to control it, and I didn't need to take it seriously, because it didn't mean what I thought it meant. And I was then creating these stories of scaring myself that I'd have this thinking, and that it was up to me to deal with it before I could move on or create this amazing performance or this business or this achieve in life. And I realized, no, Denise, it's the same as the physical body. There's something going on here in your psychology, in everyone's psychology, that is happening, and it's not up to us. And so I can get all sorts of thoughts. I can get an infinite range of thoughts come into my mind, as we do. We allude to the clouds, don't we, in the sky, that I can have lots of thoughts, and none of them, they're all up for grabs. Like, I don't have to go with any one of them, because they're optional, not inevitable, given the circumstance. Like, something could happen, we could lose a match, and I could be really, really upset 1 minute, and then half an hour I'm fine. Like, I'm fine, and I'm not so upset. So, well, what's that about? My experience can't be coming from losing the match. It's got to be coming from something other than that. And when I saw this coming from this gift, this power of thought, to just pop thought in your mind such that you get content in life, such that you get a reality, I could see that I can go with it or not. And it's not coming at me anymore. And when it's not coming at you from losing a match, it's kind of, it's lighter, it's optional, it just goes all by itself. If you don't give it any attention, if it's negative, it'll just go all by itself. And also you can get euphoria, and you can get yes, and of course that also goes all by itself. and it's really helped me to see the nature of the experience when it comes to doing things that we're really inspired to do. Because when I came across the principles, I thought, I just need to it'll calm, I'll get a thought, and but there's some things I'm really inspired to do, and they do require me to upskill, and they do require me to put the time in and to be organized. But here's the deal. Now it seems that happens more, it happens kind of from a space of neutrality, rather than a space of, I need to get that in order to be okay. And there is this kind of the word that's coming up is kind of equanimity. It's kind of it's just flowing through me, and I don't need to, like, my lung function doesn't need to be confident to function, right? So there's no confidence going on in my lung function. It's just happening, right? The blood flowing through my body doesn't need to persevere in order to, it's not persevering. It's just a part of the function. And so now when I'm really inspired to do something, I can just show up, and you know what? I'm going to have that thought, which allows me to take action. And it doesn't feel like I am persevering anymore, but I'm doing way more than I ever did before. And it doesn't feel like hard work. And I think that is because I'm just allowing the performances and the development of new skills just to flow. Like young babies, I often use as a metaphor, young babies, as they just roll over and they just make it crawl, and they make it to the coffee table, and you cannot imagine them at some point sitting there scratching their head thinking, I'm not going to make it before mum, mum's going to be annoyed if I don't make it today, or I'm not feeling confident. That's such conditioning that we kind of fall into innocently. But that baby has made such enormous progress physically, naturally. Like, we're born to learn, we're born to move, we're born to explore life and have experiences. It seems to me that's kind of at the core of our being. We're not human provings, we're human beings. And when you look at young babies and all of that movement that naturally happens, that's what's in us for our entire lives, in any endeavor. Like, we have this capacity to explore what's possible through our physical bodies and minds. And when we look in that direction, then it just, for me anyway, it just seems to flow. And I can get all sorts of thinking, especially around growing my business, that it's not going well, or it is going well, or they're not the type of clients I would like to work with. I want to work with these. But there's a feeling attached to being really, and then I can catch myself and I fall out of that thinking into this incredible capacity we have to explore life. And for me, that's the power of what the principles are pointing to. It shows us, it explains what we are and who we are as these, and it's often been said, these spiritual beings having this kind of human life. It explains what's going on. And just by knowing that and seeing that, it seems to help people. It really has helped me. Like, my life has transformed beyond anything I can ever have imagined, because the principles and what they're pointing to has made sense of my experience. And it doesn't mean I can sit back and just let life just kind of just come to me. No. I can be inspired to do things. I can go after them. I can put a shift in. I can work hard, because it's coming from an understanding of how it's working, and not from a space of lack that I need to do something in order to be okay. Because that's just not true. That's a story. Yeah. Thanks, Terry. Any other questions?
Hi, Denise. I love what you're talking about.
I can't hear you.
I love what you're talking about. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, sorry.
I probably just wasn't close enough. And when Terry was saying what she was, it reminded me of, I was just on another webinar, and Barb Patterson was talking about how when she first came to this understanding, like, there's this, for many of us, we've got a history of self-improvement, of thinking that, that there's improvements to be made. There's something wrong with us. There's, you know, there's that we're not okay, you know, just as we are. And so there's initially like this, there's a relief in the principles when you understand it, at least even intellectually, that if you understand how things work from the inside out rather than the outside in, then this whole journey of improving yourself doesn't make sense anymore. And yet, and this is what Barb was talking about, yet, and I can say me too to this, like I have found this to be true for me, and I find it to be true for clients that I work with, that sometimes initially there's still a belief, I guess, that that if I get this, if I understand the principles, then there's still these things in my life that I want to improve and to change. So there's sometimes still this underlying belief that you know, it really is outside in, that my outer circumstances you know, do validate or determine my well-being. And so in some ways, it's easy to use the principles as a self-improvement tool, even though you don't think that you're doing that. And so I just have found for myself and for people that I've worked with that sometimes you kind of come full circle and come back to like, oh, really is inside out. Like the fact that I didn't perform well here, or I didn't win this, or I didn't get this job, or whatever it is, that really doesn't define me. I really am okay.
Yeah.
No matter what happens out there.
Yeah.
But it seems to be a journey, and that I'm not saying it's true for everybody. This is just what I've seen for myself, and what I've seen for others is that this whole thing about our well-being really doesn't come from the outside. Sinks in on a lot of different levels.
Yeah.
It keeps revealing itself to me.
Yeah.
And when I think that I'm there, whatever there is, it gets revealed in another layer, and I see how I've been attached to something, the outcome of something. Because there was so much of me in that.
Yeah. That's
So
lovely.
I love even though I'm not an athlete, and but what you're saying is just, it's just true. You could plug it into anything. You know, you can just plug it into anything. And that's what I love about the principles.
Yeah.
Is it applies everywhere.
Yeah, absolutely. It is really interesting, I think, Terry, that we see it when we wake up to it, we kind of see something. And, you know, I used to think I kind of getting new insights. And then it kind of dawned on me that perhaps I'm not getting new insights. Perhaps I'm just seeing the same thing deeper, and then a deeper, and then deeper. And perhaps I'm not seeing it in that area of my life, but I'm seeing it in that area of my life. And I remember that I could see that my experience was being created moment to moment through me via these principles, except when it came to my children. And they just seem to be the exception. And, well, how come I'm so irritated here? it must be coming from them. And I would say that that was a blind spot in my life for a long time. And it really did impact my performance as a parent until probably last year, when I saw it deeper again, which is what you're alluding to, that I was kind of holding a belief that it was my responsibility for another human being's life because they were my children. And then I started to see, well, how does that work then? Because how can I be responsible for the thoughts they're getting when I'm not even responsible for the thoughts I'm getting? So that doesn't make any sense to me. And then I could see that my belief system of that I had this responsibility for the way they experienced life, the way they turned out, their happiness, creating, these wonderful people in the world. I could see that belief system was a story that I had made up. But for a long time, I didn't see that. And my performance as a parent wasn't optimal. Now, what is optimal? We're making it up, right? So we only have words, right? But we do get a sense of not being so connected to our kids, or not being so connected to another, and being really connected to another. And we get a sense of time. Here, I would have lucid moments of being content with them and, compassionate about what they were going through. And here, with understanding, I have many more moments feeling like that. So there is this shift, this dance that's happening, and that with this understanding deepening in me the whole time, like Terry said, the impact of that is that I get to spend more living minutes in a feeling of peace and harmony with life and with my children. And I see that it's not up to us. Like, it's not up to them even what thoughts they're going to get and what thoughts they're going to go with. Because it just seems to me that we have all of this, we have all of these thoughts coming to us, and it seems that, and this is just Denise speaking now, but it just seems that all of it is perfect. Like, it's all guiding us, it seems, back to the truth of who and what we are. Because when I look back, I see that everything that's happened in my life, there's been this subtle synchronicity of wonderness, even though at the time it felt horrible. Right? And this is just Denise, this is kind of what I get a sense of. It seems that everything is in perfect harmony, even though it doesn't look like that. And so with my parenting, what happened was I named a workshop, Parenting a Human Being, Not Your Child. And I think the title speaks to what it is we're pointing to, that we have so much on it as parents. And when we see that, it's just a belief system which we're making up, and we then fall out of that. Wisdom shows up in us, and we can just be with our children and have compassion for how it looks to them. And they're just doing the best they can with how they're seeing it's working in the moment. And that has to be enough. Like that's just life. That's just how it is. And Denise is not responsible for nature itself. Like that would be ridiculous. And since then, you know, the children have really changed. They've really settled into their way of being in the world. And that may not be where I think they should be, but I realize that I'm creating a story around that. And without the principles, I was inflicting my own belief systems innocently onto my children. And I was probably, for my sporting career, inflicting my belief systems about what's possible for my athletes as well, exactly the same, instead of connecting and working together to see what's possible through their physical bodies and minds, and then collectively harnessing all of that energy, intelligence. I kind of, as a sports coach, thought it was on me. Their performance as a team was kind of on me. And so when we did well, I'd fluff my feathers and feel, and then when we did badly, I would beat myself up. And that is just such a misunderstanding. And I'm seeing it all the time with sports coaching and sports coach education. And it's really unfortunate, because there's so much more I see possible for us in terms of sports performance and in terms of human performance when we see how it works. And we can start to really be explorers of life, explorers of human performance, and we can evolve it in a whole new way without sabotaging ourselves and our happiness along the way. There's many times we get lost in our striving for high achievement, believing that we need to have that in order to be satisfied and to have that feeling of peace and contentment. And it's not true. It's just it's a rabbit hole. And then because we're good at it, we try even harder. Well, that's the thing that's going to really validate me, because I'm good at it. Everybody tells me I'm good at it. So why wouldn't I try to do that? And then that's at the expense then of, sometimes that's the expense of our health and our physical health, because we burn out, because we go after it in such a way that it becomes the drug of our choice in order to feel okay. And I see that in sports people a lot. Or we will turn to other things, and in terms of substances, in order to still be able to perform. And you know, that then gets us into all sorts of trouble.
No, I just had this thought come through as you're talking. It's no wonder so many people get burned out on whatever it is that they're doing. Because if you're constantly riding the roller coaster of, when I'm doing well, whatever that is in what I'm doing, I feel good. And when I'm not doing well, I'm down here. And it's a recipe for burnout.
Yeah.
I'm interested to hear how it looks when you're coaching the athletes that you work with from this understanding.
Oh, okay, yeah. So I guess there's two things I can talk about. So my own sport, netball, all right, is I'm in the middle of transitioning to build a club which is founded on a sports club which is founded on the three principles. Now, I really am settling into being guided by mind, because this is the 7th year of coming across this understanding, and we're only just kind of restructuring such that I am inviting the coaches to be able to look in a different direction. But the way I show up now, I suppose, with them is different. So there's that side, and then there's the other side of my coaching, which is not in my own sport. So that would be with athletes that are in all sorts of other and not and senior people that are not so athletic but are still in sport. So which one will I talk about first? So in terms of my netball, for me, what's different, I suppose, is I really have got curious as to how it is they see the world. Like, I probably wouldn't have been so interested before, although I would, I was player centered. As a national coach, of course, we would be encouraged to be player centered. But the difference for me is I was living in a world of 30 years as a sports coach. You are the expert. You are knowledgeable. You have all of the experience. You have the technical, the tactical. You have all of that to impart to your athletes. And although you're player centered and you want to understand how they're operating, you're still coming from a place of knowing, knowing, and them, if you like, learning. And that now is very different for me. So I love showing up with my athletes from a space of sameness, oneness, not knowing, exploring, curiosity, and not assuming that I know what it is they can achieve, should achieve, or ought to achieve. Like, we just see what's possible. And most of the time, we're astounded by what's happening. And, we've actually closed 2 groups. We had a performance group, and we had a development group, and I worked with the development players. And the distance and their technical output now, the distance between them has really closed. And it's been phenomenal. Such that we're having to now have trials to see who are the players that are most able. Now, when I started 6 years ago, the difference between the performance and the development was huge. And now there's hardly really any difference except for physiology. And then a little bit of skill. So that's been amazing to see. And when I work with other athletes that's not in my sport, yeah, I mean, they'll come in with perhaps all sorts of issues. And my main inspiration is just to be with them and just to connect and just to build rapport and just to see that what we can see together. That's a million miles from where I was as a sports coach. Because the connection and the space I hold with them, kind of does the heavy lifting. It settles us down. And then we can see, I can really start to understand, get a sense of how they're seeing the world, and where, if you like, their misunderstandings are, what sort of beliefs they're holding as solid about who and what they are. And when they wake up to how it's working, it's just beautiful to see then them come back the next week and tell me, well, how different life looks, and what they was frightened about before doesn't, just like Terry said, it just doesn't seem to be there anymore. They didn't have to work on it. It's just disappeared. It's dissolved. I was working with a swimmer, and he couldn't sleep the night before gala. Like he would be really anxious about the races, and he'd be really hard on himself and wanting to win, but to the point of the outcome said something about him as a person, as a human being. And so after we worked together, he started to see what he was doing to himself, and that he was creating, if you like, a daymare the day before a gala, and he would be frightening himself innocently, and he'd be projecting this horrible story about the race, and it hasn't even happened yet. So he started to see, oh yeah, I'm actually feeling really rubbish, and I'm not even swimming in the gala yet. And it was really funny how he could see his projections. And really started to do all sorts of different work around where his experience is coming from. And then we had a huge breakthrough, because he explained to me one time what it was like to swim, what it felt like to swim. And it was beautiful. And I think he said that he disappears into the water. He disappears in the water, and they become one. Like he said something which was just beautiful. And that was great, because that was pointing to helping me to help him to point to, there's something else going on here. Like it's not on you. And let's look more towards that than trying to be somebody, trying to prove yourself, trying to impress, even if it's trying to impress yourself, because that's what I had all my life, trying to be better than myself. And it was beautiful to see that he was able to show up much more of the time freely, with a lot more clarity and a lot more freedom, and that he was able to get a good night's sleep before he was competing. And then his body would be a lot more relaxed when he was being introduced, and he was getting onto the blocks to start the dive. Whereas before, he'd just be so tight, and it really hindered his performance because of what was going on in his mind. And he knocked time, and he just knocked seconds off his races, which was fantastic. It's fantastic. And he was delighted with it, but he could now see he was a lot lighter even with that. So he was lighter with it, and still inspired to see what else he could achieve, see what else he could, how many more seconds he could knock off off of his time. And that became more and more possible the more he saw. Yeah.
What I love what you're sharing, Denise, because I can just feel it, is how you're showing up as a coach, as not being the expert, and showing up, in a sense, clean and just with curiosity. And like, I don't know, I can just feel that, and that the athletes that you're working with then they don't have any like caps on them. You know, they don't have any, they're free. They're just free to show up wherever they are.
Yeah.
And then, you know, and then you can meet them there where they are.
Yeah.
I can just sense that when you're talking, and it's yeah, it's just a beautiful way to show up with people who are coming to you for help and may view you as the expert.
Yeah.
And you know, as soon as we show up as the expert, we're not showing up in the present moment. We're showing up through some concept that we have of what it means to be the expert, and then you miss so much.
Yeah.
And I do have a question. What is netball? Is that volleyball?
Okay.
Sorry.
That's fine. So netball is actually the Netball World Championship is going to be in Liverpool in July this year. 2019, and it's a game which was taken from basketball in England in the early 1900s. So it became a Commonwealth Games sport. It's like basketball, but it's a bigger court, and it's a smaller ring, and it's a slightly higher ring, but it's no backboard. So it's an invasion sport game.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you for clarifying. I'm picturing volleyball, so
yeah.
I did.
It's like basketball.
Netball, okay.
Yeah. So, but no, that's lovely. Yeah, definitely. I'm so blessed to have found this understanding and to be able to share this with people, especially in the field of sport, and especially the youth. Yeah.
I think I met you. Were you at the conference in LA?
Yes.
I think I met you at the practitioners lunch on Sunday.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we were at a table eating together, and because I asked you what you did, and I mean, a lot of what you're saying.
Oh, okay.
Clicked.
Well,
so yeah,
it's sorry, nice. I didn't remember. Thank you.
No, it's
yeah.
It was brief, but yeah, I kept thinking, I think I've met her before.
Bless you. Thank you, Terry. Wow, what's the time, Bonnie?
Yeah, so I think we're probably finished. Do you have anything to say to wrap it up?
I think, yeah, I'm not sure that I do. I just love exploring life and following my inspirations, whatever that brings, and trusting beyond trusting. That life just is, that we just are. And I don't need to give it any more meaning. And I'm alive, I'm aware, and I seem to get inspired by different things. And just to follow whatever I get inspired to do. And I love that. And there are days where I don't feel so inspired, and I feel down, and that's okay too. I don't have to be scared by being down. That's just how it works.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean what I think it means.
Yeah, I really loved this conversation, and what kept coming to me throughout it is how clearly this points out that no matter what the topic, it always comes back to the same thing. Yeah. It's all the same thing underneath it all that we're pointing to. Thank you so much, Denise. This was great. I really enjoyed it. And to everyone out there, The next webinar is July 17th, and it's with Ankush Jain. So hope to see you live then. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Denise.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.